Anthony Constantino is here this afternoon to talk with us about the special election that isn't going to happen for the seat in the 21st Congressional District. Of course, Elise Stefanik and the nomination for her to become the UN ambassador under President Trump got pulled. And we're going to talk about his reaction to that, as well as a few other things. So thanks for coming in. Good to see you.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to when you heard that the nomination was being pulled and pretty much everything that you've been running for or wanting to run for wasn't going to be?
Well, I understand the president's decision, and I always thought this was a possibility. We put it at maybe 20%, but if people remember in 2016 when the president ran, it was about a 10% chance of victory, and he pulled it off. So things can happen. This was a chance of happening, and it's one of the things we planned for.
Where do you think things fell apart? And if fell apart is too strong, tell me that. But I mean, this sort of unraveled quickly.
We were in my campaign had a great strategy. We were up with the voters. I did polls. My first poll, we were up by 1 point, then 2 points, and 9 points. And ultimately, people wanted to see a really legit poll. So we got President Trump's pollster, Tony Fabrizio, to run a poll. $58,000 I paid, and it showed that I was the candidate that could win. The other candidates being floated, like Liz Joyce and Chris Tague, couldn't win. The only other person that could win was Dan Steck. But I said from the beginning, Steck wasn't an option because of his history of being anti-Trump, never Trump, and ultimately the president didn't want Mr. Steck, and he didn't want a split ticket either. So we had to make a tough decision. It was going to be a lot of work to convince the conservatives to back off their endorsement, and I just don't think the president wanted to go through the hassle. So I think the conservative party really tipped the president's hand in the situation, and he did what I probably would have done. He's got a lot of big priorities, and fighting with people over things like this probably isn't one of the best use of his time.
So if there's a blame, you blame it on the Conservative Party?
I would blame Jared Gassar, who's the Conservative Party chair. I talked to some members. They didn't even know that their party endorsed the candidate. I talked to a number of people in the Conservative Party the day that happened, and they didn't even know it had happened yet. So, I think the Conservative Party, they really betrayed the president. They betrayed Congresswoman Stefanik and the voters by backing an anti-Trumper, a never-Trumper.
Is that to blame, or is there also to blame the questionable or the special elections in Florida, right? Because all of this is
there was a lot of things at play. I think the poll that we did showed that the Republicans were struggling with turnout. I was the most my base was the most enthused base, so I had the most likelihood of having great turnout. But yeah, there was concerns. The Republicans in this situation, they become a little bit complacent. Everybody's happy because President Trump's in there, and they think everything's great, and they forget that they need to go vote. So we saw there was a little bit of hesitancy with the voters, more enthusiasm on the Democrat side. We saw what was happening in Florida at the same time, and that was the president, I think, made the decision I probably would have made if I was in his shoes. He has to focus on issues of national importance, and I tell people all the time it's hard to replace somebody that's doing a good job. Congressman Stefanik does a good job, and it's when you got bigger things to worry about, sometimes it doesn't make sense to replace somebody that's already performing.
When did you find out about this? With everybody else in terms of the nomination being pulled, or?
I had a little bit of an inside track. I got called the night before, and I believe whether I'm allowed to say it or not, it was between me and nobody. They said I got a call, and they said they're deciding between you and nobody because Steck wasn't an option. The president had my poll, or the White House. The powers that be had my poll. It saw the only winnable candidates were myself and Steck, which concerned them. They didn't want Steck. They liked me. But, it was just like they said it was going to be a hassle, and they were going to have to go through getting the conservatives to renege on their decision to endorse Steck. They'd have to back me, and it was just going to be a lot of work for everybody. And so, when I heard that, we didn't know what was going to happen. And the next day we found out that the president ultimately decided to do what I probably would have done, which is just to say, let me go focus on other things. There's a lot of things he can do for this country. He's focused on moving really quickly. I saw he had a big meeting with Elon Musk and Doge had a big sit down where they're talking about all the great things they're doing. So he has a lot of things he wants to do for the country, and I think he just viewed this as not a priority, which probably was the right choice.
With the process of how this went down, and needing to talk to 15 different chair people and have them, are you critical of the process? Is the district too big? I mean, that's a lot of people to get all to choose one person, don't you think?
I'm used to running a very dispersed organization. My company has millions of customers all over the world, really, and so I didn't have an issue with the size of the district or anything of that nature. I'm a newcomer to politics, and I did see things that maybe you kind of suspect as an outsider. But one of the big problems getting everyone to agree is the Democrats. They rallied really quickly because they knew it was going to be a tough thing, so they found a good candidate and they backed them. And on the Republican side, they sort of took the seat for granted. And so instead of thinking about the best candidate, which was me. The various chairs tried to advocate for their friend who they thought would benefit from the situation financially. There's a lot of money at stake in these situations when your friend wins or people that are favorable to you win. So everybody was thinking about, I think, their pocketbook and their money. I was the only one that really wasn't doing that. I already built an incredible company, and I just wanted to get involved to help the country and to help the state and the citizens. But yeah, it was a little frustrating dealing with that dynamic. I think the chairs weren't focused enough on picking the best candidate, which was me all along. They should have just listened to the voters, but they were fighting too much amongst themselves over picking their friends.
If you weren't chosen and it was appearing that you weren't going to be, given what we've already talked about, and at the end maybe you would have been, but you were thinking about running still, right, as maybe a third-party candidate. You weren't ready just to back out if you weren't chosen because you had the polling and you thought you had the name and the popularity, so you still wanted to be in the race, right?
I'm a very aggressive negotiator, just like the president. He negotiates very aggressively and he usually gets the outcome he wants, and I'm used to getting the outcome I want too. One of the things I wanted was to prevent Dan Steck from entering Congress because I knew he was going to become a Mitt Romney type character or an adversary to the president. So as soon as the conservatives threw their weight behind him, I said I'm going to do whatever it takes to prevent him from getting in there, and I was going to make them make a decision. It's either me or nobody, and eventually the president decided it was nobody. So I negotiated aggressively, and I think at the end of the day, I looked really good into the voters. Everybody got to see, look, I haven't been doing this for a very long time, and I'm happy about the fact I did 4 polls. I won every poll, and I even got a poll from President Trump's pollster that showed me as the favorite. I was up by 12 points over Dan Steck amongst conservatives, and I was beating the Democrat. I was one of only 2 people beating the Democrat. Me and Steck were both positioned to beat the Democrat.
If it were to be Steck in that position and then the Democrat Jen Devine, and then if you were running as a third party, okay, in that scenario, and it could have been a scenario, do you think that could have influenced why they pulled the nomination because they wanted to secure the seat for the Republicans?
I think, I made a tough negotiation to say you guys really have to think long and hard about me, but really I believe the decision was made by the president when he looked at Mr. Steck's background. Particularly, he was upset about the fact that Dan Steck votes 80% of the time with Democrats, and he voted for a rule change that allowed the lawsuit to be brought against him by E. Jean Carroll. She brought the lawsuit, and she took $80 million from the president, and Dan Steck voted for that rule change that allowed that lawsuit to be brought. I think that really upset the president.
You think the president knew who was running in this? Because he just said, and as he had an interview talking about his talk with the Canadian Prime Minister this afternoon, in that he was asked a question about Elise Stefanik and the reasoning why he wanted to have her remain in the seat for the majority, all of that, but he said he didn't know who else was running in that.
That could be. I didn't speak to him directly, but I believe his team is involved in making this decision. So I think that the people and the powers that be looked at that, and I think that played a role.
In the polling that you did, it also showed with you winning over the Democrat Jen Devine, right?
Correct. In my internal, we did a poll with Tony Fabrizio, the president's pollster, and I was beating the Democrat.
By 4 points.
By 4 points.
Now that's a slim margin.
Well, I'm not endorsed yet. I'm new to politics, and if you look at me, I started at 0 when I became the top candidate on the GOP side, and I dropped Dan Steck's poll numbers 9 points in about 2 weeks. So just by getting out some information about Dan Steck, I dropped his poll numbers by 9 points, so I didn't get a chance to really get started going to work on the Democrat. I think if I got the party's backing, the president's backing, I would have been up by probably 10 points within about 2 weeks. So, I was happy to see I was leading. I wasn't even a politician until 3 months ago, and I won every poll.
And we really don't know why the nomination was. We don't fully know, right, of like all the decisions that were in this. So you just look at the different pieces, and one of the pieces I see would be that poll, and it's like 4 points. And to your credit, you could work to increase that 4-point lead over the Democrat. But I wonder if that was like, oh, wait a minute, right out of the gate, we're not super strong here. We need to be cautious and keep Elise Stefanik where she is. But do you think the poll played any role?
It could have.
Yeah.
I wasn't in the room when they had that conversation, and like I said, the president, this in the scheme of things, and in terms of what's most important for the nation, this isn't one of the most important things the president has to work on. So I think the president's doing what makes sense. He's staying focused on the biggest priorities. That's one thing I've always respected about him. He's a great prioritizer, and there's things that are huge wins. And if I was in his shoes, I'd say, look, we already got a good congresswoman. What's the point of messing around here and taking a risk? And it was going to be a lot of work for him too, because he was going to have to probably come out here and campaign and do things, and other people were going to have to do things. And I think he has a lot of other exciting things he wants to work on.
So what's next for you then? Because this race isn't going to be, right, and so not a special election, and so in another year or so, there's an election, and if Congresswoman Stefanik were to run again, many would think that she wouldn't, because President Trump did say, at one point, we welcome her to our administration, right? So you'd think that some things would change. Where do you stand moving forward? If you had the poll and you have the popularity and you have a win-win-win-win-win, are you in it?
The president talks about polls a lot, and people mention that. They say he talks about polls all the time. Why does he care so much? Now that I'm involved, I kind of get it. Polls are your numbers. They're sort of like your revenue in business. So in business, I look at my revenue. In politics, you look at your poll numbers. And look, I've been doing this for a little while. I won every single poll. My poll numbers have only been increasing. And so people are calling me to ask with all sorts of help with different things in the future. I want to be helpful. I got involved because I want to help make America great again. I want to help the president's mission. I want to help make New York great again. We lost 2 million people over the last 10 years, and we have to do things to get people coming back to New York State. I want to be as helpful as I can. I think I have a skill set that's lacking in New York politics, and I want to do whatever I can to be helpful. But what that is exactly, I can't tell you.
And you're new to politics, and so let me just ask you this in terms of the way that this happened. The Democrats chose their candidate earlier than clearly what the Republicans were doing. So do you think the Democrats had a head start in terms of campaigning in this, and maybe that's where, because of that head start, he was able to get name recognition and kind of be a little bit of a stronger candidate?
I don't know if that was the case. I really think the fact that there was going to be a split ticket was a deciding factor. Mm-hmm. I think if that didn't happen originally, the Conservative Party was going to follow the Republican Party, but then they got out ahead of the Republican Party, and they backed a person that was anti-Trumper. And by the way, amongst conservative voters, I was winning by 12 points over Dan Steck. So why did they ignore their favored candidate, their voters? It didn't make a lot of sense. I think they did a big disservice to Congresswoman Stefanik, to the president, and really to the country by pushing an anti-Trump candidate. It didn't really make a lot of sense.
If there are people within the establishment, conservative, maybe even Republicans, that like Dan Steck, and the names that you call them or the descriptions that you're giving aren't going to make everybody happy, right? So do you have to get along with everyone to be at the top of the ticket, or you don't mind breaking a few eggs to make the omelet here? I
think you got to be critical of each other. People criticize me. Me and my business partners are harshly critical of each other when you have to be, and hopefully my criticism helps Mr. Steck. Hopefully he realizes that he has to become a little bit tougher and become a little bit more conservatively minded. He shouldn't have voted for what he voted for with regards to E. Jean Carroll, where President Trump got sued for $80 million, and that's not a good thing, and he should have endorsed the president when he had the chance to do it, and he shouldn't be voting 80% of the time with Democrats. So hopefully what I'm saying helps the party and helps him.
And so are you going to run again? I don't know if you answered that.
If we're going to have to see. We're going to take it a day at a time. I want to be as helpful as I can, and I can tell you this. We built up a great organization. I got a great organization. I said over 100 volunteer sign-ups. We distributed 1,000 signs in about a week. We're putting tons of infrastructure in place to be effective. I wanted to learn how to be effective in politics and then help other candidates once I got the seat. One way or another, I want to help turn New York red. I want to help make New York great again, and I want to be helpful to my country. I've had a great life. I have a great business, and I want to do what I can to give back.
So if you're not running, you're at least going to be a vocal participant in the election process.
I'll say this. I will say this. I do want to be helpful. I like spending money on myself more than giving it to other people and making donations. I'll do a little bit of that, but I like being in control of my own money because I think I make good decisions with my money. So we'll see what happens. Right now, there's nothing of interest to run for, but people are asking me to do different things in the future, and we'll see what's out there.
Mm-hmm. With the money aspect of it, I guess. I mean, you invested some in this, right? I mean, you were in this. You weren't. You were buying ad time and such. So you did put an investment in this. At the end of this, and to have this kind of just change just like that, how's that make you feel?
Well, I have a good situation economically, so I can do things that other people can't. Elon Musk put up a lot more money than I did to try to steer the country in the right direction. So I put up probably about $1 million or a little bit more than that towards the situation. And I think it was an interesting investment. I tell people time's finite, money isn't. You can get as much money as you want if you know how to make it, but time's finite. This was a short election, and I wanted to use money to test things and try different things, and we made some mistakes with the money, but we made a lot of good decisions too. So it was a great learning experience, and I'm happy I went through it. I'm happy I spent money, and I learned a lot from the process, and I built up a great infrastructure, and it was great.
We had you in here once before, and I have to address it because you said something on social media about us, right? So because I need to make sure that I'm defending the TV station and making sure that we're not misrepresented here. The post that you put up, you said, and you got our call letters wrong for one thing here, but WWNY deleted my interview while running full interviews of other candidates. Originally said it'd be a delay. The interview's been deleted. You recorded it, which is fine, but we broke equal time and interfered with NY21 election. The interview that we had before, when you were here a couple of weeks ago, did we delete that purposely?
It's a little bit of a strange situation. We're in 2025, and people should know how to use technology correctly. So I don't know what happened. I do know there was a little bit of a coldness between myself and the other interviewer. That's not happening right now. We have a warmer relationship, but there was a bit of a coldness between myself and the other interviewer. And next thing I know, the interview got deleted. By the way, I did a great interview, and the small little clip that was put up right away was the absolute worst part of the interview. It wasn't a bad part, but I said that was a strange part to put up. And so next thing I know, the interview's gone. And my guy said, somebody really deleted your interview by mistake, they'd probably say to you, they'd probably call you and say, geez, I deleted your interview. I feel so bad. Can I fix it? Instead, we had to keep calling, and then all of a sudden we find out it was a technical glitch, which is a strange thing to happen in 2025.
So did we do it maliciously?
I don't know what happened. I don't really know what happened.
So that's my ask on this, is if you don't know, wouldn't it be important, because you're taking us to task and putting out misinformation here about Channel 7 saying that we broke equal time, and which wouldn't be because it's the internet, but interfered in the 21st, in the NY 21st election. That's misinformation.
Not really, because an interview
we didn't
was
do it maliciously.
Deleted. Well, we don't know that, and you don't really know.
I do know that.
We don't know how it happened. It's 2025. And
I do know how it happened, because it was my decisions, right? I mean, I'm the one that at the end of the day was making the decisions. I'm going to explain what happened here in a moment. But my point is, isn't it important to ask these questions before putting out misinformation?
I think it was
like
important for the voters to know that my interview was deleted, and it's a strange thing to have happen in 2025.
That's not what your post says, right? You in this post say that we're interfering. Anyway,
well, there was interference because other people got to be heard and I didn't get to be heard.
And as soon as that was brought up to us in the phone calls, and it wasn't over and over and over, it was a couple of phone calls, and I was off on a Thursday and Friday, and I got back to your person on Friday. And once we realized that, we invited you back in to do this interview, and we would put up the full interview, which we're going to, and that wasn't in here, that we invited you back. That wasn't even part of the...
At the time I put that out, that's the information I had. We had to come to you to find it out. We asked a number of times. You put up a really weird thing in the beginning. And, I think my interview was deleted. It wasn't shown. It was a great interview, and I think it did interfere in the election. But it is what it is. It's a matter of an opinion whether it was interference or not. I think it was interference. I think a lot of people would probably agree with me.
I will tell you that in no way was it malicious. In no way was it done on purpose. John Moore doesn't have any skin in the game, and I think he's a great interviewer, so I wouldn't feel that way about John Moore, who did the interview. When I'm going to explain it. When your interview was done on a Friday, we were making the decision that we would wait until all candidates were through the process. We weren't going to put up anybody's interview, and we didn't put up yours. Then in the next week, miscommunication with the person that ended up putting up either Liz Joy's or Joe Pinion's interview, and it was like, shoot, we weren't supposed to do that, but we already rang the bell, and it was already there. And when we went back to look for your interview to put it up, it was already deleted. And we delete video often. Company policy, for one, is we don't hold on to raw video. And so it did get deleted, but it wasn't because it was like, okay, go and delete. It's an automatic thing that happens because we just don't keep raw video. Like from 5 days ago, we don't have raw video here of stories that we do. We keep our final stories, right? But not the raw video. So I just think it's important to be on the same page, but also push back as to calling us out and putting out misinformation, because that to me is what this is. It's not truthful.
And people use the misinformation word far too broadly for things that aren't necessarily misinformation. It was interference in the election, whether it was malicious or not. No one really knows. It's strange for things to get deleted in 2025, in my opinion. And people can do cover-ups all the time. So I don't know what happened or what didn't happen, but I brought it up so that it could be brought to the voters' attention. You guys are within your rights to give your side of what happened, and I totally respect that. I've enjoyed the interview, and I feel more warmth between us than I felt between the other person. So it is what it is, and I got my perspective on what happened, and other people get to make their mind up too by listening to our conversation right now.
And I appreciate you taking the question. And you just said whether it's malicious or not, we don't know. I do know. This one's an easy fact check for me to do. It was not malicious, and I want you to know that.
Oh, I just don't know about deleting videos in 2025, but that's okay.
Well, we can't hold on to all raw video. Right?
Okay.
I mean, we don't have.
There's only so many congressional candidates coming through.
And they weren't all of them.
Okay.
All of them didn't come through. Only
And of the
2
few that
others
come
did.
through, okay.
They did. They
A little
got
strange
to
just delete a
the half
congressional
hours
interview,
did
but
get, or
that's
not the
okay.
half hours, but the long form interviews did get to our,
Okay.
and once we realized it, we couldn't make
Well, if it
yours
wasn't,
good.
I'm happy to hear that. And either way, I'm happy we had the conversation, and voters know that a video
Yes.
was deleted and didn't get to be heard.
And to be on
and I think it's
TV.
good to hear both sides.
And to be on TV, your interview was on TV, and all the other candidates that came in,
Yeah, and
not
the
all
clip
of them
that was
did.
chosen was a little bit
The
strange
clips
too.
were there. Well, I can't speak to that.
Yeah,
But anyway,
you know,
they
I did
were
a
all
long
on
interview
TV.
and a very strange 2-second clip was shown. But I think it's great to have the conversation. The voters know about the issue, and I think they got to hear both sides, and that's fair.
All right. I appreciate you taking the question. Really do.
I appreciate
respect
bringing it up,
Thank
actually.
you. All right. And good luck to you as you, whatever you're going to do next for politics or
We'll see
your
what
voice
keeps
in
happening.
politics.
Hopefully, I keep coming here, and we keep cordial,
got
friendly
it.
relationships.
All right. Good to see you, and thanks for watching.